So thank you very much for joining us,
Ren.
Ren.
I
think your reputation greatly precedes you, and we're all familiar with your work with Gibson and Guild. I think today let's concentrate on your new building venture.
Well, great.
Maybe you can just tell us a little bit about the company and how it's been going.
Okay. We think it's doing marvelous. My son and I decided to open a shop and build privately here at my home workshop 2 years ago, the 1st of August. And since that time, our attempt to complete instruments is being held up a little bit due to some supply chain issues. But the building, the actual manufacturing, including all of the testing and all of the tools and fixtures that we've had to make, because I offer such an incredibly wide variety of instruments, has taken a long time. But the guitars we're building are spectacular. We've got just an incredible cache of wood, and it's a pleasure to be able to use it up finally. Stuff that I've, I guess, hoarded since 1973. I started sticking stuff away.
And I know we've been talking a little bit, obviously outside the interview, about tonewoods. Have you noticed any change in the quality and availability of tonewoods from the 70s till now?
Well, certainly from the 70s. I mean, we were able to openly trade for a number of tonewoods, and that's been restricted due to CITES intervention beginning in the early 90s. And we live with that. There still are a lot of old precious resources available. And like anything else of value, when the supply is greater or lesser than the demand, the prices just go up. But since we have started here, I've made a few new contacts and held on to some precious old friends in the industry to lean on to help us with supplies. But we found a spectacular source for bird's eye maple and eastern soft curly, just treasury wood. Very, very high quality, handled properly, and comes in close cut to dimension. So there's very little we have to do other than to turn it into a set of back and tops, or sides, back and sides. So.
And how about tops?
We have a lot of tops. I've got hundreds that I've set away. I primarily would like to use only Adirondack, but my supply is probably just over 100 pieces currently. I've got quite a lot of Sitka, a great deal of Engelmann, some European, and some Italian spruce coming. So when the COVID situation relaxes or changes, or we learn to live with it, I will be bringing additional spruce in from Canada and from Germany as well. And anytime I can find red spruce, I'm all over it. I mean, we just received, let's see, today's Friday, Wednesday, we had our rough break stock delivered, and we have enough in here for about 300 guitars now of red spruce. And that's my preference. I love to use it. I trust it. It's the sound of wood.
Great. I mean, because I've noticed that I think the quality and availability of good Sitka seems to have come down over the past 10 to 20 years.
It has, due to the Chinese being wise enough to buy up everything they could get their hand, and still do get everything they can get their hands on. Good decision on their part. The wood was there. We could have had it. So it is getting tougher to find. I haven't taken any Sitka. I haven't bought any since about 94. So I've had the wood that I've got there quite a long time. And my Engelmann is from about 2000. So European is all over the place. Whenever I find a beautiful piece, I grab it. Or try to.
Right.
And
I think there's a lot been made over the different, I call them varietals of European spruce. How some people divide it up.
I wish I had ears that were good enough to tell the difference, but I can't. I see sound with my hands. When I flex the top, I know what I want to do with it. Whether it's going to go on a small body guitar or one of our Montana jumbos or a slope shoulder, or, you know, whatever instrument feels right, that's the right top. And having the privilege of not having to just build, you know, 50 or 100 customs that are just different guitars is really nice. To actually be able to hand build one guitar at a time, even though there's a group of them being built, but to, you know, have one project that you bounce back and forth to, you know, as either materials or time or fixtures open up to where you can use it. So we do a lot of juggling, but it's just really delightful to work on one instrument from the selection of the wood all the way through the construction.
Right. Well, let me come back to that, because I was going to ask you about sort of what you were doing before compared to what you're doing now.
Okay.
But maybe just to really quickly, just because you mentioned about Adirondack brace stock.
Yep.
And I wonder whether you use split or sawn stock for braces.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you, Terrence.
I'm wondering whether you use split or sawn stock for bracing.
This is sawn.
Right. And do you think that there's
where I
appreciable
live, it's well, anytime you split wood, you eliminate runout. I mean, that is the correct way to do it. But you have to be able to be in a place that you have access to the actual fallen log and the wedge that came off of it to chase the grain. By the time anybody sees it in our industry, unless you're able to go and harvest yourself, is buying a sawn product at some point. So if it were a perfect world, I would have somebody that was just buying brace stock for me and splitting the wheels with a froe and bringing the slabs in to be turned into both tops and spruce braces. I mean, but we do what we can.
Yeah.
And we get real good quartering. And I would be lying if I said there's no run out, because I believe there is in everything.
Right. Yeah. I think it's fantastic to hear. I think I suspect when a lot of people say that they use split stock for bracing, what they mean is they split it off a sawn piece.
Very likely they might be able to buy planks of it. Just kind of like Brazilian rosewood, red spruce has gotten so coveted that, you know, getting to the guy that actually is lugging the stuff out of the forest on his back is just really proved difficult to do. Now, there are a few people that do cut and sell their spruce, but it's still, you know, it still gets worked by machine somewhere along the line. So
got it. I think that's very understandable. It's very understandable. And maybe let's segue into how you're working now differs from sort of your role and what you're doing with big companies.
Not having to, first of all, build for someone the same thing for a product for a catalog, which is a fine thing to do, but it doesn't allow you to keep your hands on the stuff. And while I worked for Gibson, and a good time while I worked with Guild, is I traveled and I was either buying or representing the product or going to fix something or, attending conferences and stuff. So I wasn't able to have my hands on every piece of wood that went through the factory. I was lucky enough between those every few weeks that I would go away for a few weeks, I would be able to work in the shop at that point. But even then, I had to share some of the stuff that was done with people in the factory. Here, having a chance to continue to pass on to my son all of the chops that I've, learned or assumed from other builders over the years, and actually have a chance to get my hand on it. I could be using pre-carved necks. I could buy them from Stuart McDonald or maybe somewhere in China. But I like carving necks. I like working toward a dimension that somebody asked for. If they want 1/805 nut width or 1 3/4 or whatever it is, I'm going to hit it. And it's just that little bit of extra energy that I like to expend for me. It's if you ordered one, it would come in exactly what you wanted. But getting there by hand is it's a pleasurable journey.
Got it. Right. And I guess now's the time to ask. You have such a vast experience handling woods, building guitars. At the moment, there seems to be a trend towards more of a quantitative, methodological, scientific basis to building. I'm wondering if you tend to rely more on experience or whether you used any of these sort of tuning methods.
I hope that I have learned enough to be smart and listen and learn from whatever is offered. So far, much of the stuff that's being done with guitars, both classical, acoustic, and even some of the electrics, you can over-engineer or under-engineer. I mean, people used to cut strips of wood, glue them together over a wooden bowl to make lutes and stuff, and now they can nearly injection mold a guitar. I mean, it's come a long, long way. What I think is important is not so much what tool I use or an attitude I have against someone that is using one that maybe I don't agree with. That was a decision that I might make. I would decide that this isn't for me. I prefer to do it this way. I trust the results, or I have the experience to know that if I do this, it'll still be here in 50 years, 100 years. I guess the chance to learn and try new stuff is always going to be, deep in my heart, because I want to learn, and I work with a lot of different people in different fields, just trying to flesh out how sound moves. What does it do inside? What does it do outside? How does that move that air? And how do I change the color or the tone of that air movement with the combination of materials and stuff? And I've never seen two pieces of wood that are the same, so I'm not sure that a math equation could quantify it. I mean, I've heard a guitar made of pallet wood. It sounded pretty good. Bob Taylor made it as an example. I've heard some plywood instruments that sound very, very acceptable. Some with solid tops sound great. The bottom line is really, we just have to have a lot of different price points for instruments, different manufacturing styles, so that more people can play. That's sort of the reason we do this. It's not particularly financially rewarding, but you do it because you love it for a reason. Now, there are people that love music of all kinds, and some like classical or jazz. They might like electronic music. I'm not a big fan of that. I wouldn't want to make a guitar sound or be able to manipulate a guitar to that extent. And yet people put pickups in them and they do a lot of percussive stuff on it. Again, that's not my thing, but they make great music with it for other people. that's what it ought to be about to me.
That's great. Well, I think for this part we're coming up to 15 minutes, so let me just take a pause, and then we'll come back and revisit a couple of questions.
Okay, sounds good.